Happy August, everyone. And we are here with our Skills Summer Seminar. Today we have something slightly different. We've got Barry and Jeannine who's going to talk to us about KM plus AI equals more BD. And with that, I'm going to give it to you, Barry and Jeannine. Wait, just a reminder, this is a seminar, not a webinar. Anyone may go unmute, ask whatever question you have. You could use the chat to type your question. We only ask if you have a question, type all question in all caps, so Lucy, who monitors the chat, can surface. If you ask a question in the chat and turn on the camera, Lucy is going to ask you to ask your question. If you are introvert, you just want Lucy to read your question, just put your chat and don't turn on your camera. That will be the sign. And with that, Barry and Jeannine, the floor is yours.
And welcome everyone to our seminar where we'll be discussing how knowledge management plus artificial intelligence leads to better business development. And Oz chose to present a representative, me, from the marketing side. I'm a former CMO and have been in marketing technology most of my career. And Jeannine, who's on the knowledge management side. Just to let you know how this will go today, we're going to break up our presentation into 3 themes, and we'll be asking questions that, yes, Jeannine and I will answer, but to Oz's point, we want all of you to also answer some of the questions. So a few points I'm going to stop. And also to break the ice a bit, before each of the themes, we'll have a survey question for all of us to answer online. If we have time at the end, we will open the floor for any additional questions, comments, and so forth, although it would be just fine with me if we have enough questions and discussions throughout that we end up not having time at the end. We'll see. But first, as we each introduce ourselves, Jeannine and I will say a few words about not just introducing ourselves, but also the overall theme with a short TED-type talk. So Jeannine, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, happy to do so. Hi, everybody. I was really excited about this opportunity when Oz and Barry approached me about this, mostly because I have a career history from working in investment banking and at law firms. And where I started my career in investment banking, it was really covering the mergers and acquisitions business at a large bank, and was responsible for essentially organizing our knowledge and our data, really trying to understand what our revenue opportunities were, managing our pipeline, trying to work through pricing opportunities and profitability, and then really needing to expand on those revenues through various initiatives, which would include events and marketing pitches and automating a lot of the data so we could repurpose it as well. I moved over to law firm at that point where I was hired to focus on strategic initiatives. So that was rolling out client programs and industry groups and bringing data forward for the management committee. And I realized at that time, that's when I really was having a career in knowledge management, in marketing, and business development, and just strategic revenue-driven initiatives. There wasn't a name for it in investment banking like it is in law firms. So as I was working within law, I realized there was so much untapped data that was sitting across all these different siloed departments that really do drive decision-making for how you could expand your growth opportunities, how you can build a partner up for more industry exposure or their particular book of business. And part of that was the knowledge management function. So without having access to understanding what happens with lawyers matters, where they're spending their time, what's going on in the market, in the industry, how can you actually put forward and execute on those initiatives? So spending more time trying to build out a knowledge management function or make sure that we had enough processes in place was a tremendous undertaking in order to be able to drive forward some of those revenue initiatives. So I'm always looking for efficiencies and access to that client-centric data. Um, as most of you know, it's extremely manual, or you're tracking data in a system that just sits there and nobody does anything with it, which can get really frustrating from the role perspective for those people that are trying to just tag data into the DMS or file your best-in-class contracts or really understand what's happening in the industry. And it just kind of goes into the nether and like, you don't do anything with it. So I had an opportunity at that time to move it to Cleary Gottlieb, where I am today, to build these type of systems. And that's where the Knowledge Solutions team came into place. And we were able to partner with Barry and the foundation team to bring that platform into Cleary, so we could at minimum have access to the data that sits in all of these siloed systems, and establishing what we call our matter profiling program for the knowledge management function to document and store and basically make data accessible to business development so they can have it to write their narratives, to put their pitches together, to respond to their RFPs. It's been a great journey, but part of the struggle that we've also had is, how do you get the data out of these systems? So you might have it organized, you might have it in a great visible way or dashboard style to be able to read and consume. But when you're exporting Excel spreadsheets and trying to marry that with your client marketing activities, or trying to answer specific questions from an RFP for a client, you're still buried in all of this data. The magic that I'm really excited about now, probably more so when I was excited than Foundation, is the AI aspect of this, because we can really get there with AI to have to leverage the data and be able to do something with it, to remove these kind of siloed departments, and join up and marry the data that you really need to respond to clients or to find and locate prospects and targets. But a lot of that needs to still stem from KM data, giving access to BD, and AI. I'm really excited about is a platform or a functionality that BD can really leverage.
That's a great introduction, Jeannine, both to yourself and our topic.
Yeah.
So it's my turn.
Yeah.
My name's Barry Solomon. The Reader's Digest version of my life. Professionally, I started as a lawyer at Sidley. My brother and I spent a summer creating a prototype of something that became Interaction. So I left my practice. I was at a software company selling to marketing and business development professionals at law firms for many years. After we sold that company to Lexis, I went back to the same firm, Sidley, as their chief marketing officer. While I was there, together with others on the team, came up with another idea for an experience management solution, Foundation, the one that Jeannine just talked about. So I left Sidley a second time. I was there as CMO for about 7 years, and I joined Foundation as one of the owners. We grew and sold that to Litera, which is where I am today. And my story is really going to be about Foundation, the same experience management solution Jeannine just talked about. And really my favorite conversation with a partner that I had several years ago. He explained to me how Foundation was instrumental in him winning new business, in particular, a new investment banking client. And the reason I thought this was so fascinating was not only because this was a rare partner who didn't take 100% of the credit himself for bringing in business to the firm, right? That was part of what was fascinating. But what was really interesting is when he went on to explain, he never actually used Foundation himself. He got information from a business development professional who was supporting him going out to meet this potential client, a company that the a firm that the law firm had never done work for. But the business development person provided excellent intel about matters the firm worked on where they were one of the players, right? And he was able also to find out from this business development professional about the relationships the firm had. And so I talked to this business development person who said they never captured that information in the marketing team. This was all information that for many years, the knowledge management team, working with lawyers in the practice of law, delivering the legal services, collected to help with things like, bringing in the right people, staffing, providing guidance to clients, and so forth. So it was, to me, illustrates that one story, at least 3 points that we're going to be discussing today. The first is the importance of collaboration among business development and knowledge management professionals and how that can help move the firm forward. The second, and Jeannine talked about breaking down silos, and yes, it's important to break down silos of technology and to break down silos among departments and among people, but also between the practice of law and the business of law. Here, as a byproduct of work that firm had done for many years on the practice of law side, they provided benefit to this lawyer through the business development professional. And then the third lesson or the third point is that although this predated Gen AI applications, right? This was several years ago. Yes, they existed, but lawyers weren't familiar with it. Law firm, business development, and knowledge management weren't really embracing it. It does highlight the importance that with a new technology to best be implemented, you need to go beyond simple change management and embrace beyond change management and embrace change leadership. And what I mean by that is with change management, you focus on how individuals use software, for example, and what you might measure is their use of an application. Whereas with change leadership, in contrast, the focus is on the why. What's the vision? What are we trying to accomplish? And what that firm did clearly was talk about, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here's the team that's going to accomplish it. And there was a collaboration among the lawyer, the business development professional, the knowledge management professional, as well as the technology. And so I think we can use that as we think about the change we're all going through with Gen AI, right? It's not about measuring the how, what's the cool new feature, it's what are we trying to accomplish? So with that, we'll turn to our first theme, which is the evolving function of KM and BD. And we're going to bring up the first survey. And what you need to do is take out your phone and, put it up against that code so that we're able to go into slido.com, or if you prefer, you can just type in slido.com and the number. And since my story was about the use of experience management, our first survey question involves that type of data. In particular, who owns the collection of experience management data at your firm? And note that we use the term own, we're not asking who enters, who collects, we're not asking who uses it, but rather who's the owner of the collection of experience management. Okay, so I see we almost have an even, well, let's let it go another few seconds. About a third, it's marketing and business development. about a third, it's co-owned. A quarter is knowledge management. Some is co-owned by all, and very few by IT.
And Barry, your experience with Litera, I think if I remember correctly, historically it started as BD groups.
It did,
and,
yeah.
And most recently, it's really KM who are driving it more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a topic we may want to dive into, but I'll say briefly, my judgment in observing many, many firms is, although I personally, and this seminar is all about collaboration, I think with ownership, you need accountability. And my observation is where it seems to work the best is where it's owned, not by marketing and not co-ownership, but by KM, and where marketing is a really critical use case, but one of many use cases, and that the knowledge management tends to have a lens that looks across all of the potential use cases, where when marketing owns the data collection, it's a specific use case lens. And you might miss out on, for example, that story I told. Jeannine, I don't know if you agree or disagree with
No,
me.
I agree. And I think there are some firms, though, that might not have a dedicated KM function that sits within a separate group. So the marketing or business development team might take on that function too. And we see that also at a lot of smaller firms, right? They don't have separate roles for it. So it's kind of, you have to do it all. But where we do have a dedicated KM function, as Foundation has matured over the years, it tends to be that particular role that owns and really kind of manages the experience, meaning like the matter profiles within the Foundation system.
Right.
So we already have a highlight from today. Litera says marketing should not own Foundation. And the session is being recorded.
I didn't say that, and it's also Barry Solomon, not Litera. So I love.
I was kidding. I appreciate the honest advice. The whole idea here is to really give what you think works, and the idea is to make everyone here better at their job and thoughtful about how we approach it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, Richard Robbins made a really good comment, which is incubated in marketing, ... And the reason I think that's so clever is because marketing and business development is such a powerful use case for experience management, it really, having them own at the beginning isn't a bad approach. In fact, I've seen that be very successful. It's just my observation is once you mature an experience management solution, there's so much that you might do with it. It really is in everybody's interest, in my experience, although it's not the only way of doing it. So our first theme, though, wasn't about that, although that was an interesting side. We wanted to talk about, and Jeannine, let me ask you then, as a knowledge management professional, I give my perspective from the business development side, but from the knowledge management perspective, how have you seen that function evolve over the years?
I would say that data became more recognized at firms and thinking about it as a strategic asset. So not only being the way that we're using it to understand the past, but how we're also trying to think about it from the future advantage. And now with AI, we have an opportunity to just not just catch up with the data organization there, but to be able to stay ahead with all of the knowledge engineering opportunities that we have.
Yeah. So when I think about the evolving marketing and business development function, a couple of things come to mind. The first is very similar to yours. It's that use of data today in just about every single aspect of marketing and business development. I mean, there was a phrase, shortly after I became Sidley's CMO that still rings in my head today. And that is, if you can't measure it, it's not marketing, stop doing it, right? And that requires that you measure things. But it's really interesting how even that has evolved. I was recently talking to a CMO who said that in 1 week, 2 partners came to her and said that new clients came via a Gen AI search they were doing without using Google and never looking at the firm's website. So their measurement of SEO traditionally was around, okay, what's the traffic my website's getting? We need to start capturing and measuring other things today. So, the data that we need to look at is changing. I also see a shift from business development being a primarily reactive function to using this data to become more proactive. And then finally, I see a shift where it's interesting because it's 2 things happening at the same time. The one thing that's happening is there's greater specialization. And I think part of that is you need people that really get communication, images, design even, but you also need people who can coordinate things as well as people that get data. And so you get more specialization than perhaps when I first started. But at the same time, you're getting more collaboration across departments. So some of those, number crunching people within the marketing department are working with finance, with knowledge management, with pricing. So there is both more specialization and a lot more collaboration, both within and across departments.
I thought you were going to be saying something else or in addition. I think with the AI revolution, I know you're going to talk about how AI helps KM and BD,
Yeah.
but I think it's fair to assume that in a not very distant future, our clients are not going to come to us for a lot of what they come to us today, and they're just going to go to the AI box, right? It's going to be very convenient what is going to be the public LLMs that just do good enough job and will get better, or there will be a product sitting that the clients go to, whether it's going to be a law firm product or Lexis product or any one of those. And then I thought you were going to say that having all the data we're collecting now is going to be key to create new services that you can make available to the client in the client's environment without talking to the lawyers at all, right? So how do you weaponize your knowledge to become a product that you could put in front of the client or in the client's environment to make the law firm still relevant in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think what may really be interesting, there's 2 ways that Gen AI may change, and what you're talking about is on the practice of law side. I think one way is it may change the type of law that's practiced, right? I mean, when I lived through the introduction of the widespread use of spreadsheets, right? Believe it or not, when I first started practicing law, that wasn't a widespread use. When clients of firms, business people started to have the ability to crunch numbers in a new way, it opened up. Securitization used to be, very plotting and difficult, and it became so sophisticated because you could put default provisions in that just weren't possible for the business people to do before, and it required really smart lawyers to introduce new types of legal services to be able to craft the appropriate vehicles to take advantage of that. I believe Gen AI for smart lawyers, it's not just going to be doing the same things more quickly or replacing associates. It's going to be, what can we do that we couldn't do before to that point? But I think there's a second thing that may happen, and that is a lot of times the brand name law firms always provide services to those who can afford those premium prices, is it possible that legal services at a branded firm, meaning an AmLaw, 100 firm, 200 firm, can be wholesaled, in a way, and via technology, consumers of legal services that used to not be able to afford that level of legal services could get it. So, I think it's interesting, a lot of times boutiques compete with the big firms because they can do work at lower rates. Might it be that the big firms can now go down market using technology in a way that they can deliver their insights, via Gen AI, and it is interesting. Who knows where it's going?
And I just want to add to that on Oz, your point about clients being able to access through, the AI box that's out there, to understand what services they potentially need or what firms they could work with. That, however, is based on public information, and obviously our law firms have a lot of rich institutional information that is not public. So there's also a lot of experience that we have or advisory services based on information that does not make it outside of our walls. And that is where the KM aspect becomes really important, to make sure that we're capturing that information and able to provide that in a way that BD can access it. Because when we do have our clients that are in place, like, we need to your point, weaponize to make sure that we have that knowledge available, because it's actually going to sell more so than just what people are going to find in the public domain. All the secret stuff that happens is really what we need to have access to so we could sell better.
So before we go on to the second theme, I want to invite anyone in the audience to share an experience where business development became more effective or more proactive because of better access to knowledge management insights. Anybody have any thoughts?
I can start when we rolled out enterprise search at White & Case. We had, at the time, our document management was office by office. So each, and we were approached with a proposal to help taking privatization of the Polish airline. And the guy went to the Polish website, to the Warsaw office, and there was no documents. He was searching for aircraft privatization. There was nothing. And we just rolled out, at the time it was Recommend search engine. And we actually had the world expert. He was sitting in Hamburg, and he did something like that, and he knew all of it. So he told us, like, we got this multi-million-dollar engagement just because enterprise search existed, and something before I didn't know how to find was surfaced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Phil Rice from Mayor Brown.
Hi.
And Oz and I were at White & Case at the same time, working together. You might remember, Oz, we established a better method for configuring and storing transactional closing sets. And we were able to, marketing BD team wanted to capture information about closed deals. And so we developed a good trigger system that when a closing set hit the collection, we would notify the matter profiling team on the marketing team, and they would know to go in a very timely way. That was the key, get to the lawyers and ask questions exactly when the lawyers remembered everything about the deal. So it made it easier for everyone. So I think that was a good example of synergy.
And if anyone have any question about closing set, Phil is the world expert.
All right. Any other questions or comments before we move on?
I'll just volunteer one quick one, Barry. So our knowledge management team was capturing regulatory alerts and tagging that to attorney experience. And what we were able to do is work with BD to tie that to the target and the prospect lists that our business plans had, and essentially set up an early warning system to the relationship partners so they were aware of these market alerts. And then, they were less reactive and more proactive in reaching out to their clients and hearing about opportunities from us. So that market intelligence really kind of grew a couple of our client programs, which in turn strengthened some of our matters and gave a new experience.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's turn now to our second theme, which is defining the data, what KM collects and what BD needs. And again, let's kick this off with our second survey. So since we're going to be talking about, the collection of data by KM and the need for this data, if we could go ahead and put that survey up. The question is, does your firm's knowledge management team focus solely on supporting lawyers, or do they also help marketing and business development? And it's very encouraging to see that at most firms, it's supporting both, although there's a few. I wonder if any of the anyone responding that it's lawyers only might want to comment on how that works and if they interact with BD at all, or if it's really completely siloed.
I have a slightly different angle to it, which is, I think I would have been tempted to put lawyers only, but actually often when it's about winning work, even if the lawyers are asking the questions, the information goes to BD. So I think, it really depends what the purpose of it is, but often the lawyers are asking, or vice versa, marketing are asking, but actually it's for a lawyer's purpose. So I think it's difficult to be black and white. I think as you were saying earlier, these functions now are so interwoven in lots of ways. And I suppose when we had our pre-call, I was making the point, having come from a knowledge background where traditionally the support was for the lawyers, working with BD, when it works well, it's amazing. But sometimes there are tensions because the needs of the lawyers and the needs of business development are very different, because it's about business of law and practice of law. But I think often the information is being sought from for a business development perspective, and that query can come from BD, equally come from BD or from lawyers. I think it's now becoming a real melting pot.
Lucy, that is such a good point. I think part of what's reflected here is historically, most marketing and business development functions have been very reactive, responding to lawyers' requests, and the lawyers were the ones driving all of the activity and the movement. And as lawyers allow marketing and business development to be more proactive, they then need to collaborate more with KM. So I think that we're seeing this shift. I bet if we asked this question 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been half was lawyers only. So I do think that it's interesting, but there are still some partners that really don't want to be, told what to do. They just want to, direct and get people to respond. So let's turn now, Jeannine, to this question. I'll go first this time. What does KM collect? What does BD need? I'll tell you what I need, and then you tell me how you can help, right? Yeah. When I think about the data business development needs to help lawyers grow their practice, I'll start with, what do clients want? What do clients ask for? What's going to persuade a client to use me versus another lawyer at another firm, right? Now, when I think about that question, it reminds me when I was sitting having lunch once with a corporate counsel, how times have changed. And it used to be, like when I was practicing law way back when, we had a joke that the way you did marketing was you answered the phone on the third ring instead of the fifth ring, right? And so here I'm having lunch with this really sophisticated buyer of legal services. And he said to me, Barry, I don't care if your lawyers take me to dinner and golfing. What I want to know is, have they handled 5 deals really similar to this one that I have? Or when I have a dispute, have they handled and represented a client in this jurisdiction, maybe in front of this judge or with this opposing counsel? And they want the answers fast. Sometimes it isn't just get me the answer, but I want it really fast. So, it is that type of responsiveness to experience. So Jeannine, how can and that comes down to representative matters, right? And then the lawyers who know how to handle those types of matters. So how can your knowledge management team help support that, Jeannine?
So I think there's a lot of data that knowledge management does capture and store, but also the market intelligence piece I think is really important for us not to forget, right? So leveraging all those third-party vendors that we pay a lot of money to understand what's happening in the market and compared to what our institutional knowledge is based on our own experience and inventory. And that has a lot of thought about matter intelligence. That's what wins pitches, right? So what's happening in the market, what are some of the positive outcomes that happened in the market? But when we look inside, based on our same experience, what does that team composition look like? What are the fee structures and why are the fee structures set up that way? All firm touch points on to tie into the client relationship mapping. So the key context across the practices. So kind of describing what the experience is by those partners within each one of the areas of law or governing laws within practices. That helps prevent conflicts and helps coordinate the outreach aspect. There's messaging and positioning and pricing strategies that BD needs to focus on. So understanding what current work we're actually doing and trying to give that narrative or those deal points in a way that BD can actually speak to it knowledgeably, so they can manage and understand what our ongoing capabilities are. A lot of that can be done through data capture throughout the matter lifecycle. And I think that's the key points and driver for how BD can get access to information quickly. Let's not wait until the end of a matter. So to the point on closing folders, that's too late for us to actually understand what our inventory is, because we want to celebrate those milestones of those deals, of those cases at those particular points. We have to capture it then, because that's when BD has opportunities for cross-selling, to claim league table credit for announced transactions, as an example, or for chamber submissions. These are the marketing aspects that really get the attention of our clients. So if we're not sharing that information along through the life cycle, we're waiting 2 years or 3 years for when that data becomes available. That can be done through also intuitive tagging. So lean into your DMS for those taggings, but we also need to understand the industry that's associated with our matters, the matter type, the jurisdictions, the deal value. Things that non-lawyers can actually use to package up narratives and to put, their tombstones together or to respond to RFPs.
But they hate to do that, right? I mean, they're saying, I hired you, Barry, to solve my BD problems, or you, Jeannine, to help my KM problems, and you're giving me homework now. So what's wrong with the picture? This is your job. Why do you come to me? So how do you address that?
You're saying from the voice of BD?
The lawyers, no. The lawyers are saying, you're coming to me, asking me now to summarize all those deals. I hired you for that.
Well, I think that's where you can buy data, right? You can lean into your third parties, be able to automate a lot of this program and the profiling aspect. That's where a lot of AI can come into play too, right? We want to spend less time manually tagging and putting information into the system, but it still has to happen. So let's find a way to automate that to reduce the burden on lawyers. But the magic sauce, I think, that to get from the timekeepers is the notable matter details. What makes this matter exceptional? So whether it's a new deal provision that was put into place, or whether it's the largest oil and gas, transaction that happened, or it's a judge that we were in front of that we won a case for the first time. We're not going to know those things sitting within BD. We're barely going to know that within KM. So the timekeepers have to lean in. So if you're only asking them for information that is basically from their knowledge perspective, then you're reducing that burden.
That's right. And I do think, I often use the phrase, the lawyers don't mind using a red pen, they just hate using a blue pen. And, you have to, if the information exists anywhere in the firm, don't ask the lawyer for it, right? But to Jeannine's point, there is some things that the lawyers uniquely have. And, I do think that really good marketing and business development and knowledge management professionals will even take a shot at it, but be very clear. Hey, I think this is really unique for this reason. Can you help shape this? Rather than, hey, here's a blank piece of paper. Could you describe this matter?
And to that point, a lot of our success within the matter profiling program is giving a draft to a lawyer to review and say, does this look good? Is there anything that you would like to add to it or contribute to it? The second part is also having them understand how this information drives revenue and drives marketing and business development efforts. League table is a prime example of that, right? So if you try to talk to partners about where our rankings are for specific practices and how do we increase our rankings so we can get that client exposure, the only way to do that is through data and through submitting it and understanding it. So you can show the end result of how their contributions really impact what the perception is.
Nothing better than egos. If there is any way to find who the firm has done most of, if you could play it on the internal portal as well, or wherever you find it, you'll get much better compliance.
Yeah, a lot of, it's interesting because we're talking about how KM helps BD, but BD can help KM because lawyers are very motivated to help BD describe their matters for chamber submissions or for an article or for other promotion. And through a byproduct of that, you may have some rich insights that would be helpful for the KM team. So it's kind of this virtuous circle. It is hard, though, to talk about data without also briefly discussing data quality. And Jeannine, I loved how you were talking about and emphasized the matter life cycle and how certain information should be asked at different points. It's not just adding information, something that may be accurate at one point in a matter life cycle may be inaccurate later. So I'll start with you. Does ownership, we asked that survey question earlier, so let's go harken back to that. Do you think ownership of the data collection process impacts data quality? And if so, how?
And with that, I'm just going to add one quote that I love. One partner who said, "You ask me for information about the matter before I know and after I care."
Yeah, it's true.
You beat me to it. I was just ramping up for that, but it is your quote.
I think owners are key. Otherwise, you're not going to have people that put processes in place to collect and understand the data. However, I think this is a collaborative approach and everybody has a responsibility to make sure that that data is accurate. To the point that you both just made, there isn't one subject matter expert on information within our matters. Everybody plays a different role. All the timekeepers do. So associates have a different lens and a different amount of information about it than a partner does. But it doesn't mean that one is more important than the other. So really making sure that you have people from all different departments, all different roles looking at the information. I always say, like, it's as simple as a matter description, which I use a lot as an example. And on your intake system, it could say potential acquisition. Well, then as you're going through that life cycle, it's a buy side, you're discovering who the target is, it's maturing that way. And then all of a sudden, the partner wants a press release to go out and we have no information about who the target is because our systems still say potential acquisition.
And how do you go about getting the information throughout the meta lifecycle?
I think a lot of it is visibility. So yes, KM and BD have to lean in a little bit more and have some processes to collect it. But if lawyers see what that description is and it's in front of them on a regular basis, and then you also explain the importance of why that description is of no value and is doing a disservice to our revenue growth, then you can find opportunities to upgrade that.
And I know, Barry, that there are firms who are using the closing set to use AI to do it. Do you know of anyone who is using AI throughout the meta lifecycle? So as you go, it does it?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm certain that will evolve to that.
And I think that's where the business of law comes in more so. So, there's a lot of the legal jargon gap, I would call it, where KM is going, into technical, or the timekeepers are going in to more about the deal provisions than they are about the matter description, right? So making sure that you have that transparency and people are looking at it from the different lenses or different audiences of how you're writing those narratives. So it's important that we make sure that the information that we have is easily translatable into some sort of proposition for BD to use.
Mm-hmm.
So just looking at time, do you guys have another question for the audience, or are we done with questions for the audiences?
Well, we do. I was going to ask a question right here, which is, and it's related somewhat to what you said, Oz. It's not so much using it to collect data, but I was going to get into with data quality. It's not only about timing, but it's also about context, right? I mean, in other words, data quality is in the eyes of the beholder. And the classic example is with conflicts. If I'm a conflicts professional, I may have perfect data in my database for my purpose. If you then start to reuse this for other purposes, not so accurate. I'm wondering if there's anyone that has seen Gen AI used to help with data cleansing. Ironically, there's the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. That's certainly true with Gen AI. And in fact, it's almost more troubling with Gen AI because you can clean up a bad result and make it look like it's a good result with Gen AI, right? But we could also use Gen AI to help us. But I'm wondering, is anyone doing that yet? Or has anyone even seen or thought about using Gen AI in that context?
So clearly, there's the extraction from closing set that we know about.
Yeah.
And then I heard, and maybe Barry, you could tell us more about it. There is a rumor, there's a product called Lito.
There is indeed. Well, we've been talking about the intersection of KM, business development, and AI. And so I think it's worth this group knowing about something that was actually just announced. So, you're ahead of the game here, Oz. It's called Lito. And, Lito comes from Litera 1. But what it is, it's a legal AI agent that understands the context of your work and then orchestrates the right tools to deliver outcomes. So it's embedded in Litera 1. And, for those of you who know Litera, the company that acquired Foundation, my old company, is used for drafting at almost every firm. It's something like 98%. And Litera 1 is the next generation, not only of that drafting, but it pulls together all of these other Litera solutions, including Foundation and others. So from a KM perspective, it helps unlock firm knowledge, making it accessible in real time. It also, from a business development perspective, it empowers business development teams and lawyers to move faster, answering the question, have we done this before? Or what's our experience in this space and so forth. But from the lawyer's perspective, they can be in Word, they can be in Outlook, they can be on the web, and it's the same interface that they're using for comparison, for example, for drafting checking, some of the tools that we know lawyers use day in and day out. If you're interested, here's a place that you can go to learn about it and even join the list.
Great.
Thank you. And with that, I think we are gonna move on to the third topic. And so we have another question on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. How would you rate the current collaboration between your KM and your business development team? And almost everybody is right in the middle. So Jeannine, where have you seen cultural or structural hurdles that keep these teams from working together more effectively? Because it looks like across the board, there is room for improvement, even with firms that are doing it pretty well.
I would say it's silo operations. So you have BD teams that operate in separate organizational bubbles and they have limited collaboration. So we've already talked about how that's important to make sure you don't have those missed opportunities. The other piece is the lack of awareness of the information that each department does capture, where to get it. And so there's always these training initiatives that we put into where to find and locate the information. So some emphasis on those tools. But the big piece, and this is where AI comes into place, is like BD spends a lot of time in our CRM system, KM maintains things in document repositories, and systems rarely integrate with each other. So there's also duplicated efforts that's happening and a lot of incomplete information. So using ways to organize and structure your data, whether it's through data lakes or leveraging other opportunities, putting some LLM on it, using AI agents to have the information talk to each other, that is going to be the power. And it's always then going to reduce what I would say one of the biggest battles is the attorney attention. So both teams compete for time from the timekeepers, right? From the partners. So KM needs their input for knowledge and maintenance, and then BD always wants the lawyers to focus on client development. If we have agents and LLMs to be able to answer the questions so we can talk to our data, there will be less need to bother any of the partners, and we can produce more insights and break down those silos.
Yeah, breaking down silos. When I look across the many firms that I've observed over the years, from my perspective, the problem with collaboration between business development and knowledge management, the root cause is almost always the lack of a shared vision, the lack of feeling like we're in this together in order to accomplish X, that they're doing different things. They may collaborate because they don't want to step on each other's toes, but they're actually trying to do different things. And this kind of harkens back to what I was talking about at the very beginning about, yes, the importance of change management, but change leadership being so important. And I believe there's an opportunity with Gen AI to almost invent reasons to create projects where people can collaborate. And I think the dividends that would be generated are the types of wins you get unexpectedly when people realize, hey, this colleague of mine in this other department could really find these insights helpful. And yes, my primary focus is on supporting this particular, practice in this in the practice of law, but because we had that experience of collaborating towards a common vision, it ends up working better. Well, I'm mindful of the time, so as I kind of hoped, we don't have time for a separate Q&A. I would love, though, to finish up, Jeannine, with each of us kind of providing 1 or 2 key takeaways. I think we have a slide that summarized what we were thinking about, but feel free to to, mention one or more of those or just summarize your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that one of the key takeaways is your gold mine already exists within KM. You're already capturing a lot of data. Let's leverage it. Let's use AI to be able to bring that forward in a way that BD can understand, or be able to take the data that you have and use this new technology to write pitch narratives or descriptions for you. So the problem isn't about the lack of knowledge, it's that it's trapped in all of these places and BD can't leverage it. Make sure we think about AI amplifying our data infrastructure, so we can take that intelligence layer, surface the right precedent, think about the right client insight, exactly at the moment that BD needs it. And then thinking about what that vision is, Barry, of what your technology platforms can bring. So thinking about partners being able to talk to this information so they get instant access to all of their relevant cases, every client preference, and that power of like the strategic aspect that you're looking for against what your targets are. And then BD not having to scramble for the relevant precedents, that so they can really walk into meetings, they can bring armed talking points or any sort of institutional knowledge that demonstrates why our firm is unique versus the standard information that you get from the public domain or from a check the box search in our knowledge management systems.
Thank you. And I'll do my two very quickly. The first one is I would actually change the title of this seminar slightly, because I don't think it's knowledge management collaborating with AI to deliver something to BD. I think it is knowledge management collaborating with business development, both of whom are collaborating with AI in order to deliver a strategic advantage. And then the last point, which is somewhat related, is don't just manage change, lead it. And with that, Oz, thank you for having us, and everyone, thank you for participating.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you guys can give us, be kind, and either click on the link in the chat or scan here to give us feedback. Next week, the closing seminar of the summer series, we're going to have Ferguson and Nir talk about getting the AI interest on your KM investment. We already got the feedback. We know people ask for more, so we're going to start again. We're going to take a month break after ILTA, but we're going to start in mid-September again, and we're going to have a fall seminars, and then we're going to end at the end of October. Get ready for Skills, the summit on January 12th and March 12th. So I hope to see many of you at ILTA. We're going to be there at the Skills party on the 12th. And with that, have a nice weekend and see you next week.